Well, hello, hello, and good Saturday to you. I know it's never an easy topic to speak about, but I want to really talk about shame today because I've had a really full week of private client sessions. And as some of you know, I've been working on something beautiful to help you to really heal from pain and unresolved trauma. And that's going to be coming up pretty soon. And I also want to ask you, wow, I can't believe it, but I say this every month. We're at the end of June, and are you ready for July? Um, I think shame is such a huge topic, but shame essentially boils down to feeling unworthy or um, not belonging, being unworthy of love. And I really want to speak more of that because it's been coming up a lot this week. And we're going into a month where those Chiron energies, that energy of the wounded healer, is going to, whether you like it or not, make you really sit in the pain and the shame of why you're shooting yourself out of your happiness. And I think just looking at the sort of planetary energy alignments for July, it's probably going to be the most challenging month of the year. And I know this year has been incredibly challenging for many of you, and you're probably going, oh my gosh, how much more can I tolerate? But if you just look at the planets, we've got two eclipses coming up and incredibly tense moments of opposition in Cancer. My daughter was born in Cancer. One of my best friends was born in Cancer. And Cancerians are all about home and safety and a sense of belonging. And we've got this opposition of Cancer in Capricorn, and we've got a Mercury retrograde conjunct with Mars. And Mars is very divisive. It's the warring planet, and it's going to be there for 2 weeks. But what I want you to know before I get into shame is that this doesn't mean that you have to lock yourself up in the house and not go anywhere until the end of July. It would be pretty impossible to do that. But I always kind of laugh when astrologers say, don't do this now because it's Mercury retrograde, and don't sign any contracts, and don't make any decisions at the eclipse, and don't fight with your partner when Mercury is conjunct with Mars, and it goes on and on and on. And I just want to very lovingly say to you, don't give your power away to anything. Don't make anything more potent than your own ability to create from the power of choice, because you hold the power and you have to make that commitment to be the authority of your own life. And I think that a lot of that is missing the point when we're giving our power away to external forces. And this is where shame comes into it a lot too, because we're looking for external validation before we show up. But the whole point is, I think, and I'd love to hear your comments on that, is when we're challenged, right? When there's stress, and I did a post about this earlier, I think that we misabuse and misidentify what we're talking to when we say we're stressed. What we're actually saying, if we're really honest with ourselves, is that we're afraid. And we're afraid of the unknown. And we're afraid of our own potency. There's so much that we are taught that we need to be afraid of. Be careful, where I'd rather say to my daughter, be aware, trust what you know, and do the hard stuff. It's very different to looking at the anatomy of stress, right? This biology of belief, which I go into in depth in how to work at the level of their nervous system to get to the root cause of why am I afraid, right? So be mindful of when you say, oh, I'm stressed, to just push pause on the world and stop, put your hand in your heart, connect to your breath, feel what that feels like and where you're feeling that in your body. And then ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Or what's underneath this feeling that I'm having? Eclipses are very powerful, but when you're in an opposition or a square, like we're going into, it means we need to take action, right? We can't just say, oh, it's retrograde, or, oh, my north node is not aligned, or any of those things. Just like we can't, meditate ourselves into a more blissful state. And I hope I'm not being too disjointed here, because it's just like there's just been this flood of information and insights and downloads coming to me over the last week. And I really want to thank my private clients, those of you who've been so courageous to show up and look at, you know what, we have to do this work and we have to do it together. You cannot create, you cannot heal in a vacuum. And you can wait a lifetime and chase all your trine transits if you're into astrology, or look at, your Enneagram, or look at numerology. But you'll notice that nothing happens unless you decide to take aligned action, because things happen and they're all learning opportunities, right? When we have tense aspects such as squares and oppositions, or when your eclipse hits your chart, there are just moments of expansion. And if we look at it like a planet is more active when it's in retrograde, because it's all that means is it's as close as it's going to get to the earth. So you can't ignore its energy even if you try. So, you may have to redo certain things or revisit certain places of discomfort where you've avoided them in the past when Mercury is in retrograde. And yes, some things might get delayed, but I spoke about this. It came up in the energy forecast from animals this week of trusting in divine timing. Right? But be honest as well. Don't put things off because you say, oh, it's not divine timing. And use all these energetic and quantum helping spirits, if I can call them that, to really sit in the discomfort. Deal with the stuff that you haven't dealt with when perhaps Mercury was direct. And if you try to avoid the energy of a planet or aspect, or anything in your life, in relationship, we're in relationship with everything. We're traumatized through relationship, and we have to heal through relationship, because we can't exist in a vacuum, right? We all want the same thing. We want connection. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be held, right? We all want a felt sense of belonging, that our lives matter. So, when you start to refuse the work, it's kind of like having your foot on the brake and the accelerator. All that happens is you burn yourself out and you put off the inevitable learning opportunity, and you don't want to wait for a healing crisis before you do this. And so, this month coming up is exactly when the planets end up overpowering us if we let them. So why not use your energy instead of wasting it, draining your energies and leaking your energies out into things that you cannot change, and start to look at what can I work with here? Because this is when we really are going to get the best out of it. So as the old saying goes, you're better off if you swim with the current, let the current take you, than try and, go against it. So it kind of sort of ties into what I want to speak to about shame and what animals have taught me, especially those that live close to us. We've all seen that look of, oh my gosh, I'm so guilty, from our dogs. My Great Dane has more than once, because he likes to sort of skim the counters in the kitchen. And when the opportunity is right and there's a beautiful plump chicken or a piece of steak sitting there, he's taken the opportunity and taken it and eaten it. And when I found out, there's this look of guilt on his face, because he knows he shouldn't have done it. But animals don't go into shame, right? They don't go into blaming and shaming and making themselves wrong. This is something that, because we think we have this limbic brain, that we should know better. And sometimes we don't. You don't know what you don't know. And your ego will always convince you, right? Because that's what shame is. It's the feeling that you are wrong and bad, where guilt is, I have done something wrong. And it's a learning experience. You can't learn when you're in that shaming or the shoulding, where your ego is going to convince you that you are wrong, right? That you are flawed or rotten to the core. And somehow this always feels like you're taking responsibility. But shame is a very destructive substitute for real accountability. It's about looking at where am I responding to something? rather than actually going into a spiritual bypass, which shame can actually sometimes do. So as long as you keep reaching for shame, does it make sense that instead of responding to the felt sense of what is going on, that you're always going to stay stuck? You're going to repeat your same pattern over and over again in choosing abusive relationships, in self-sabotaging your money flows, or whatever it is. And, you know, it's something we all collectively know because we have all been shamed. So again, know that shame is not something that you kind of come out of the womb being. It's something that is assigned to you. It's a projection of somebody else that perhaps hasn't been able to work through their own levels of really being authentic and being able to stand in their own truth. And when things don't go as planned, like in your business relationships or your self-care or whatever it is, your shame filter, right, will always say, oh my gosh, I am so stupid. I am defective. This is just the way that I am. Oh, whoa. And we kind of can get into that victim mentality pretty quickly. And I kind of felt that today, which is before I actually jump on a call with my cryptocurrency genius. It really prompted me to want to get this out to you today. Because I went into this place of absolute shame today because I didn't do the work. And because of it, I went straight back into how could I be so stupid? What was I thinking? When I actually invested probably a good year and a half ago in cryptocurrency, in Bitcoin and some Ethereum and everything else, and I actually didn't know what I was doing. And of course, that old shaming pattern of mine put me out of my depth, right? I'm out of my depth. And so instead of actually asking for support, asking for help, I actually just said it and forgot it, which in a way turned out to be a blessing because Bitcoin is on the rise at the moment. And if you bought like I did at $300 or $400, it's now almost at 12. And a lot of people are saying it's going to go up to 20. So instead of shaming myself, I had to go, okay, you made a mistake, but you're not the mistake, right? You just need more information and you actually need to ask for support and for some support. And so I've put myself out of that for the moment, but I'm not saying that I didn't stay there for a long time. But a lot of times shame's going to tell you that you don't deserve success or you don't deserve to make quick money, that you, and this goes into your money beliefs and money shame that maybe you inherited from your family, where maybe you're told you have to work hard for money. It can't be this easy. And then you go into the self-sabotage of making sure that you lose all your money, which I almost did with this cryptocurrency. But anyway, just know there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to fix and there's nothing to prove. And learn from it, because I'm hoping that what you can see is that shame kind of lets you off the hook. And why I kind of equate it to a spiritual bypass, because if you're feeling ashamed, your whole being collapses. And so you don't take action, you don't take responsibility, and you don't learn from it. Right? Shame becomes a prison and you are the eternal jailer. You are the one that holds the key and the lock in your pocket, and only you can set yourself free. So, I think it's true to say that we've all been shamed, right? At some point in our life, and this is where I go into depth in this, in the Out of the Blues program, where we really go deep into toxic shame and to see what drives it from the trauma patterns, right? The attachment styles that we adopt to never make waves, to just collapse, to avoid confrontation and all those other things. But basically what shame does is when we've been shamed, we run away from our emotions. We don't want to feel it because it feels so painful. It feels uncomfortable, and it oftentimes breaks our heart, right? So it's also true that shame isn't our fault, as I've said. Shame happens to us just like a cold, right? It's the Wetiko, the virus of the mind. So we don't create the cold virus, just like we don't create the shame virus, but we experience what it feels like to have a virus. And it's the same with shame. So when it comes to shame, and I've had a lot of clients who've said things to me that were, you know, really serious things that they've done. And there is shame in it, right? They should be ashamed because they know that they were out of congruence, that they were out of integrity, and that they perhaps hurt somebody. And, you know, the worst sort of extreme case of this is molesting a child, right, that couldn't defend for themselves. You should feel shame about that, but don't bypass the feeling of shame. Learn from it. And this is one of the things that I teach everyone that works with me, is that shame fits the facts, just like that story I just told you. And if it's true that you did something that you know, were so far off your moral compass, and that if other people find out about it, they will reject you, right? Our main fear is of abandonment, of alienation, of separation, of a lack of connection. The function of shame in humans, right, in us, is to get the other to keep quiet about things that will make other people reject you, right? This is where we go into secrecy acts, and we have vows of secrecy that are actually passed down from us intergenerationally, which create trauma. And a lot of my clients have shame that fits the facts. But when you've done something you know is ethically wrong, like I said, like inappropriately touching a child, or not asking for permission to be touched as an adult, when they couldn't say no, we keep our mouths shut, right? Because it feels so bad. There's a collapse in our body. But that doesn't mean that you're actually a bad person. It means that the universe thinks you might be a bad person. And so it helps us to see that our feelings fit the facts, but the facts are often wrong. So in other words, they're problematic. They're unfair, they're mean, they're unjust, they're this, they're that. It helps us to see that our feelings fit the facts, but the facts are wrong. And I'm repeating myself, because shame is that prison, right? Just like secrets imprison us, because we're taught, especially we grow up in dysfunctional families where there's alcoholism, or there's drug abuse, or there is some kind of incest going on, and we're told that we keep the secret. It separates us from ever getting the support that we need. It suffocates our freedom, and it separates us from ourselves, right? This is where we start to fracture and disown and reject the parts and pieces of us that we're ashamed, for example. We get separated from our wise self, our highest version of ourself, our freedom, our spirituality. And shame always convinces us that we only have two choices. And that's to fix the world perfection, right? Or to abandon it. So we either create connection through our wounds and uplift the whole, the collective consciousness, or we reject and we abandon it and we create even more separation, which is this epidemic of loneliness that we're seeing on the planet. So the root of shame is to be asked to be responsible, to take accountability for the things that we cannot be responsible for. And you can often trace it back, as I said, to childhood. Abuse certainly sets the stage for shame, but it can also be more subtle. And I talk about this a lot, this what I call cuts, the chronic, unpredictable, toxic stresses of living day in and day out with emotional neglect or abuse in the household. And maybe there were unspoken hints that you should be a certain way or act a certain way, or there were maybe outright demands by the people closest to you that your feelings were not welcomed, right? That you have to stuff your feelings down, literally swallow the mirror, and just put a smile on your face. And this is that I'm fine, when people can see that you're hurting or that you need help. And this is like, no, I'm okay. And the thing with shame is that it was given to you. But it doesn't mean that you have to continue passing that down your ancestral lines, right? You don't have to continue to carry it and make shaming demands on yourself, or the shoulding and the coulding, to follow your critical inner saboteur voice down the rabbit hole to taunt you, which it will, and to constantly make you wrong. Genuine responsibility asks you to heal shame. It's the greatest gift that you can give to yourself and everybody else that you love. And you can work with past shame by holding a very tender space for yourself in inquiry, in meditation, for your wounded child parts and the adolescent parts, and perhaps into your 20s and your 30s, where I certainly, was shamed a lot in my narcissistic abusive marriage. So you have to refuse to take on the shame and instead give it back to the original offender with love. This is where that question, who does this belong to, can give you some real insight, because 99% of the time it's not yours. And it's a powerful way to use healing in your meditation as well. So work with your present day shame. I'm just watching the time before I go and self-sabotage my opportunity to get support in the parts and pieces of myself that felt so ashamed, that was going, how could you be so stupid? How could you not get all the facts and do all the work? And then that voice goes on to say, well, you see, you can't be trusted with money. How could you be so careless with money? Because I didn't do the work to actually learn how to make cryptocurrency work for me, without having to work hard for my money. Anyway, so just know, when you can start to identify the unrealistic addictions to perfection come into it, unrealistic expectations, unrealistic demands that you make on yourself, all those shouldas, shouldas, then you can start building a muscle of loving acceptance and allowance, and make the choice to reach for some self-compassion as you learn how to be with the parts that are still deeply embedded and rooted in shame that was given to them. I know that for me, I heard my father say so often, how could you be so stupid? Oh, you're so stupid. You're not going to amount to anything. And I carried that into my adulthood. And I used to project, how could you be so stupid on other people? Because the part of me that was still feeling like I had to defend and prove that I wasn't stupid by working myself to death and back to always be the overachiever, could actually take a break in that self-compassion. So please be gentle with yourself. It's a process that may need some time, and we need to be present and be patient in order to practice building that trust muscle, building that resilience back up. And to just be aware of, where you might be, like me, making yourself wrong. And I think another place to look is, where are you dumping shame on other people? And this, again, it's very subtle. I used to do it in the sighs, the rolling my eyeballs, the way I held my body, that was quite confrontational in a space where other people were being really vulnerable and asking the questions that I was too afraid to ask for fear of being made to look stupid, right? To be laughed at, to be ridiculed. So look at where you're maybe projecting or dumping your shame onto others, and where you're making other people wrong. And look at what are the judgments and the criticisms that you voice, and maybe how silently you shame others, because it's very contagious if you allow it to be. That virus of the mind, the Watiko that we speak of in shamanism. So you may say to yourself, like I did, I'm so stupid. And then the next person you come into contact with, all you can see is stupidity, right? So you pass it along. And I just think it's time to forgive yourself and make a commitment from your authentic truth, from your vulnerable, hurt parts that were shamed, and to stop dumping your shame on your tender bits, and certainly to stop dumping your shame on others. That's true accountability. You know, how much kindness can you tolerate in the aspect of shame? Can you just sense the freedom or feel the freedom in that? So my invitation to you this weekend and over the next week and for the rest of your life is just to notice where you're maybe shaming yourself, or maybe you're shaming others, right? It's the voice of criticism. It's very unkind, and it actually is abusive when we start to place unrealistic demands on other people because we haven't healed that chironic wound within ourselves. And look at when your critical voice does take hold, and just stop and put your hand on your heart, right? Do that heart connection exercise I posted earlier on my page. Just ask, you know, for support, energetic support from the people around you that care about you, to just, and from yourself, to just be compassionate. Allow for your compassionate, loving self, the one that sees the value in you, that knows you're intelligent beyond your years, to just come in and support you. I think softening into that allows us space for forgiveness. And when we can begin healing our shame by illuminating it, right, shining light on it, and then moving into forgiveness, right? It's a process. We have to grieve for the part that's dying, that's familiar to us. But forgiveness is the most beautiful thing that you can give to yourself and to others. And if I believe that if we're ever going to sort of end this personal pain and the collective pain where hurt people are hurting people, that's how we're going to have to go to stop living in a suffering state. We have to overcome the fear that we're not good enough. We have to overcome the places of ourselves that still believe that we should be ashamed that we're not further along in our life path, or in our business, or with our money relationships, or in our love relationships. And we have to face the shame and then release it, kind of like a kite that goes into the wind. We have to be willing to let it go and to create new healthy beliefs about our personal worth, right? And we also have to stop seeking validation from outside of ourselves. So I hope that you join me in this inquiry this week, but also in this Healing Pain and Trauma masterclass series that's coming up. I've already opened the group. It's a closed, safe group where we're just starting to get to know each other, and we're going to just start to warm ourselves up, because this is not comfortable work. And we, as I said, we need the support of our peers. We need allies that have the same values and want the same thing, which is to end the pain and suffering that we're seeing in the world, and that we're holding ourselves. So we're going to begin a 5-day inquiry next week as to just get ourselves primed for this masterclass series. And I've called it an inquiry process because I don't want to stress your already tender nervous system by calling a 5-day challenge, which is very popular these days. I think the challenge is to give yourself permission to say yes, to join in. Ask yourself, what have you got to lose other than the death of the old story, the death of the old pain, the death of shame that's keeping you stuck in this perpetual cycle of self-sabotage and that creates this very unkind place of what is called the self-love deficit disorder. You can't be in judgment and in love at the same place. So commitment's all that it takes to show up and do this sort of inner work. And we're going to begin, as I said, on Monday by exploring toxic shame. One of my most favorite people, Brene Brown, talks about toxic shame as a place that shuts down the nervous system. It blocks neuroplasticity. And, whatever the triggering event might be, being blown off by a friend, um, is equivalent to that resonance of perhaps having emotional neglect as a child, failing to get a promotion at work, being criticized in front of your peers or your co-workers, or ridiculed. Okay, this is one that I know very well growing up. You know, I was ridiculed for being too sensitive and crying and knowing things that I shouldn't know as a child at family gatherings. And I think one of the most powerful derailers of our resilience and our well-being, and even the neuroplasty of our brains, is shame. So I hope that you join me. And in the meantime, you know, I'd love to hear how you're going to actually hold the parts of you that are still deeply rooted in shame that was never yours to begin with. And I'd love you to add your thoughts, or ask some questions, or leave some insights in the comment section below. And as always, if nobody told you this today, and my dog always is so beautiful. My dog always seems to come in and know the perfect time when I'm finishing my little love notes to you. Just know I see you, I honor you on your journey, and I love you. And I'm just so grateful that we're in this together, and together we're making a difference in the world. So let's leave the world a better place than we found it by just, you know, loving those tender parts that are still feeling ashamed or feeling wronged by something that actually had nothing to do with you. And I'll meet you there. And how beautiful is that timing? I have 2 minutes to get onto my call and save my cryptocurrency. So that's it. Lovely to see you, Ingrid and Alan and Lawrence and Tracy. Oh, I'm sorry your phone keeps freezing up. Good to see you, Glenn and Pierre. Let me know your comments, and just love yourself, as I do. All right, take care. Bye.